Hello again and welcome to On Camera. I'm Alan Kazanjian. Today my guests are Rick Weaver, the International Studies Coordinator at the University of Maryland, and two students who have studied on the study program abroad. Please stay with us and we'll be right back. Okay, I'm sitting here now with Rick Weaver, who I earlier identified as being the International Studies Coordinator at the University of Maryland in the Study Abroad office. Rick, I was going over some of the pamphlets and the brochures that your office offers, and a couple of things crossed my mind. The first thing I wanted to ask you, did you ever study abroad?
No, I didn't know. Which comes as a surprise, as I think, to a lot of the students that I advise. When I was an undergraduate, I assumed that study abroad was only for students who wanted to study another language. And I was not very proficient in French, which was what I was studying. And as a result, I never really considered studying abroad. When I entered a doctoral program at the University of Maryland in history, I had the opportunity of teaching for the University of Maryland overseas and ended up teaching for 2 years in Germany, in Italy, and in Greece, and found the experience to be one that really changed me in a lot of ways. I found that by being abroad, I was forced to examine who I am, understand American culture, as well as learn about the countries that I was living in. And when I came back, I really felt a strong commitment of wanting to help other students do the same thing.
So that's how you got involved with this. Let me ask you, the program, as I see it, is offered for two countries. One for England, and the other is Israel. Can you give me any idea why you've selected these two places as the study program?
Okay. Study abroad is fairly new at the University of Maryland, so we don't have a large number of our own programs. Besides the two in London and in Israel, we also have some exchange agreements with universities in Germany and Japan. We have also had a summer program in German language in Kassel, Germany. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to expand the opportunities, but there's no way where the university can run its own programs that's going to fit the need of all the students. And therefore, what we do is try to encourage students to identify why they want to go abroad and help students go on programs that are offered by other universities. So our primary objective is to get students abroad. If we can run some students that are going to help some Maryland students, mm-hmm. that's fine. But our primary goal is to help people get abroad any way we can.
Okay, so you're saying that they study in conjunction with other universities. For instance, in Israel, what university would they be studying with, in Tel Aviv or?
Okay, well, Maryland's program in Israel is with Tel Aviv University. Okay. And what we have done is placed our students in a special program run by Tel Aviv for Americans and Canadians that's given in English, not in Hebrew. Our students go there and study Hebrew, but their classes are actually given in English. Mm-hmm. We complement that by placing students on a kibbutz for several weeks at the beginning of their program so they can get some kind of introduction into Israeli culture. We have a week orientation in Jerusalem at the beginning of the program. But that's certainly not the only way that Maryland students go to Israel. We also have students that attend the program at Hebrew University. We have students that have studied Hebrew language through the University of Haifa. So we have one program, but that doesn't limit Maryland students in terms of what they can do.
All right. Now, let's say we've got the student now going over to Israel to study. What type of credits will they get? Can they get accredited back to the University of Maryland?
In almost all the cases, they do. Transfer credit at the University of Maryland is really two steps. One issue is whether the credit's accepted by the university, which my office can advise students about. Then they have to find out if the specific courses that they plan to take abroad can apply to their degree at the university. So two students could conceivably take the same courses. One student might be able to apply it to their degree because they still have an opening for that particular course, whereas another student may not be. So it really involves academic advisement through their departments in coordination with my office.
Okay, now when you're coordinating all these students that have come to your office, I'm assuming right off the bat that these are the University of Maryland students. Can students from other campuses, other universities also be involved with the University of Maryland study abroad program?
Yes, they can. For example, this coming semester at a program in Israel, we have a student from Syracuse University. Our program in London has a number of students from a wide variety of other institutions. We currently have in London students from Johns Hopkins University, University of Delaware, University of South Carolina, and really a lot more than that.
Okay. Next, I guess the next logical thing I would think about is, okay, this is talking about London. That's been an idea or a dream that I've had to study in London before. I guess the first thing I think about is how expensive is this going to be? What do I have to put out to do this? And compare it to, say, the tuition that might be at the University of Maryland for a semester or a year.
Okay. The cost of studying abroad is the biggest problem. I think it's an opportunity that I'd like every student to have, but realistically, the costs are significantly higher than studying at Maryland. I would estimate that a student going to London, by the time they had tuition, room and board, airfare, plus personal expenses and travel, would probably be spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 for a semester, which is a lot more than in College Park. And one thing to put that in perspective, that's an effort to have an all-inclusive price. So if you break that down, tuition, room, and board is $3,500, which comes very close to an out-of-state student at the university. Probably $500 for airfare, and then the highly variable expenses of students traveling on weekends, going to the theaters at night, and that adds a considerable amount of money to most students' expenses.
Okay, now do the students that are going to take part in this program, what about living accommodations? Do they have dormitory-style living? Do they live with families, say in London? Do they get their own flats? Exactly what would they be doing?
Okay. It really depends on the program and the location. In our London program, we have two possibilities. Students can either live with a British family or they can find their own flat. Our underlying philosophy is that we want the group of Americans who are over there to be broken up so that they're living separately. What we try to avoid is having all the Americans live in one place. In our Israel program, we're fortunate because there are dorms at Tel Aviv University, while there are not dorms in London. And as a result, we give students in the Israel program the opportunity to live in dorms, and we encourage them to either live with Israelis or recent immigrants to Israel.
Okay, now again, as a student, I guess my next concern would be not necessarily just the finances, where I'm going to live. What about my grade point average? What do you require of a student?
In our programs, generally, you have to have, at a minimum, a grade point average of 2.5. So between a B and a C average. That's even increasing a bit next year because if students on our London program want to take some specialized advanced level courses in their major, they would have to have a 2.75 grade point average. There are other programs that might require something higher. We have a 2.5 as a minimum because when students go abroad, they're going to have a lot of adjustments to another culture. And we don't think it's wise for someone who's having somewhat of a difficult time with their academics at home to possibly send them abroad and with all the other adjustments they're making, perhaps have a bad semester academically.
Okay, now I'm going to bring it back to myself for a moment. I started out as a theater major, so London would be the appropriate place to go, I would think, to study some of this. And now I've changed my major. I'm in communication arts. What potential is there? Can I go to London and study some of this in the London schools?
Okay. One of the first things that I do in advising students about going abroad is to ask them what's the primary reason they want to go abroad. And I think initially students think about going abroad to primarily study in their major. And there are certainly opportunities to do that both in theater as well as in communications. While we don't offer courses strictly in communications, there are programs offered by Temple University, by Syracuse University, that have a specific communications focus. However, I might raise the issue with a student such as yourself. Exactly why do you want to be in London? Do you want to get some experience with British production techniques or the approach to the media in Britain? Or on the other hand, do you primarily want to go abroad to learn about another culture that might give you a new way of perceiving the United States? And if you were interested in newscasting, for example, might improve your general analytical skills. So I think it would depend upon what your objectives were. And I think there are study abroad programs that would really be appropriate either way.
Okay, one thing, I have to go back a step because I was thinking about the finances and all. One thing that concerned me is if I don't have enough of the finances, just can you quickly tell me if we can get financial assistance for this?
I'm glad you asked the question. In most cases, if a student receives financial aid through the University Financial Aid Office, the money can generally be applied to study abroad as long as it's on an approved program. There may be some exceptions in individual scholarship programs, but generally it is the case that it would apply.
Okay, thank you. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at in and around Washington, D.C., and we'll be right back with a couple of the students and talk about their experiences on the study abroad program.
Hi, I'm Tuvan Ha.
And I'm Mike Cibola, and we're going to tell you what's happening in and around D.C. For you sports fans, coming up on Saturday, November 26th at the Capitol Center, they're featuring wrestling beginning at 8 p.m. And also at the Capitol Center, if you're a basketball fan, the Bullets will be playing Milwaukee on Tuesday, November 29th at the Capitol Center. The game will begin at 7:35. And for you Hog fans, Washington Redskins, those world champion skins, will battle Philadelphia at RFK on Sunday, November 27th at 1 p.m. That's their next home game. After that, they'll have a home game at RFK against Atlanta, December 4th. The game begins at 1 p.m. Tuvan?
If you want to see some very great acts at the Wax Museum, be sure to come on November 24th and see a rocking performance with the Road Ducks. On November 26th, Johnny Sportcoat and the Casuals will be there. And on the 26th, Growing Up Different. The Constitution Hall will feature The Maze on Friday, November 26th, and Clarence Clemens will be performing at the Bayou on Monday, November 28th. Coming to the Capitol Center on Monday, December 5th, Heart, along with Kansas, will be in concert. And also at the Capitol Center on December 11th, AC/DC will be there. Mike?
Thanks, Tuvan. If you're interested in live performances, the D.C. and surrounding areas are alive with many musical and dramatic performances. In the area of dinner theater, the King's Jester Dinner Theater in Silver Spring is presently performing the former Broadway musical Ain't Misbehavin'. The show will run at least through January 1st. Call now to reserve tickets and also ask about their special group rates. At Petrosini's Main Street Dinner Theater in Laurel, through January 15th, the Agatha Christie suspense classic The Mousetrap is being performed. It's a play of superb intrigue about a group of strangers stranded in a boarding house during a snowstorm, one of whom is a murderer. The play, of course, ends with a famous Agatha Christie switch finish.
The D.C. area theaters are offering a diverse selection. At the Eisenhower Theater at the Kennedy Center, Noises Off by Michael Frayn is now being performed. The show stars Dorothy Loudon and will run through the 27th of November. Also at the Eisenhower Theater, the Paul Taylor Dance Company is presenting their Dance America series. They will be performing Washington premieres of Snow White and Sunset. Their show will run through December the 4th. At the Kennedy Center Concert Hall, the National Symphony Orchestra will be performing through the 30th of November. Okay.
And in the Terrace Theater at the Kennedy Center, the Washington Opera is performing the works of Handel and Donizetti through the 27th of December. At the Folger Theater, a British pantomime version of the classic Cinderella will open November 29th and run through January 8th. This pantomime is an ageless tale of a handsome prince, two ugly sisters, the magic Dandini, Buttons the mischievous manservant, a fairy godmother, and of course the beautiful Cinderella. At the Warner Theater, playing from November 29th through December 4th, is The Wiz, Broadway's revamped version of The Wizard of Oz. Opening December 1st at the University of Maryland, Tawes Theater, is Moliere's The Miser. It's a delightful, dizzying contest between love, money, and comedy. The show will run through December 10th. For more information on shows, showtimes, and ticket prices, call the local theater.
At the University of Maryland College Park campus on December 2nd and 3rd, the 20th Century Ensemble will be performing their contemporary repertoire. The ensemble will appear at the Recital Hall in the Tawes Fine Art Building. The showtimes are 8:15 p.m. on Friday, December 2nd, and 3 p.m. Saturday on December 3rd. As December grows near, we once again find ourselves in the Christmas season. As the joy begins to spread among all of us, we must not forget that the holiday just would not be the same, especially for a young child, without a trip to see Santa Claus. So make sure that you make a special trip to Prince George's Plaza on November 25th, because Santa will be there that day to say hello, spread some good cheer, and take some early Christmas wishes from all those excited young children. Also, on the Christmas note, the Mayor's annual Christmas Bazaar will take place on December 17th at the Washington Convention Center.
Well, that's it for right now within and around D.C. If your group, business, or school in the Washington or Prince George's County area is having an event that you'd like to publicize, send us a letter explaining your event at least 3 weeks in advance to On Camera, RTVF Department, Tawes Fine Arts Building, College Park, Maryland, 20742.
I'd like to introduce to you now two students from the University of Maryland. First, I'd like to introduce Karen Antos and Alan Amberg. Both students have been on the program with the University of Maryland, and I'd like to start with Karen. I'd like you to give us just a little background of, you went to Israel.
Yes.
Well, let's start with the orientation. How did that start?
Well, the orientation actually started at the University of Maryland. We had 2 sessions headed by Rick, and it just gave us an idea of what we'd be in for. And we met some of the students who had been there before and saw pictures and got very enthusiastic about the whole thing. Then we flew to Israel, which is a very long and tiring flight, and we landed in Tel Aviv and were picked up by Dr. Greenberg, who's kind of the liaison there. And we recouped just a little bit from jet lag and the beginnings of shock at the university for a night. We just stayed with students who would take us in. And then we went to Jerusalem. And I would say that was the best thing that could have happened, because it's the heart of Israel. And I think the thing that we were all most anxious to see. And we had a very able tour guide, and she would take us around, except on the days when the weather was too bad. And the rest of the time we just wandered and we saw the historical sites and the holy places, and just got this most wonderful and unique feeling before we went on with the rest of the program.
Okay, one thing that comes up in my mind right away, how did you feel? Did you feel secure when you were in Jerusalem?
Oh, yes.
There was no problems then? And then you went on to a kibbutz.
Yes.
Could you maybe enlighten us a little bit? I'm not really familiar with what a kibbutz is, so if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, a kibbutz is an institution unique to Israel. It's kind of a collective farming community. And the kibbutz that I went to, that our group went to, was a very young, small kibbutz on the shores of the Dead Sea. And there were only 45 actual members. Anyway, we went and got a taste of kibbutz life. I've been in retail for 2 years, and I'll remember the first day on kibbutz, we went down to the vineyard, and I was picturing green grapes and stomping and drinking wine, and we arrived at this dead-looking, barren little place. We were going to prepare it for the greenness to follow, and they handed me a rake, and they said, rake. And I raked for 6 hours, along with the rest of the poor University of Maryland group. But we were there for 2 weeks, and were adopted very nicely by the kibbutz and met a lot of people. I made a lot of permanent friends there, both kibbutz members and people who had just passed through. And I think it was really nice because we got to know a little bit about Israel that the other people on other programs didn't get to. And so we were kind of absorbed, and some things were very familiar and maybe even old hat by the time we got to the university.
Okay, and then there seems to be like a third step with this too, that it's the Ulpan, is that pronounced correctly? Could you just enlighten us a little on that too?
Well, that's an intensive Hebrew language program. It was, we got credit and graded on it, but it was really apart from the regular program. It was 6 weeks, 6 long weeks of learning Hebrew, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And learn it we did.
Okay, I'd like to turn it over to Alan for a second. We've gotten the orientation here, and Karen's talked about the kibbutz and Ulpan. Is there any way that you can relate? You went to London. What's the similarities or dissimilarities on your program?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I think the biggest misconception I had going over there was I thought, well, we speak the same language, and therefore, you know, I watch my share of public television, and I thought, well, I probably understand them pretty well and find it fairly familiar. Well, as Rick said, they split us up, gave us different families to live with, and that was the end of my feeling familiar in my surroundings. The language was the same, but there was nothing that I could really recognize and identify with. The money was different. If I picked up the papers, all the names, even describing the government, the way people talked about things. In some ways, I think we were not, well, maybe because I was so sure that I would be familiar with it, but in some ways I think maybe we weren't eased into it as much. I think I think all the Americans expected that it was going to be a very easy transition, and it wasn't.
It wasn't, huh?
It was surprisingly different. And I think in some ways the shock of all that was really a good thing. I realized when I got over there that at the great and grand age of 19, I thought that we Americans had the corner on how things were done, you know, and that we understood it pretty well. It's a completely, I think that was the thing that was most exciting, learning that England, and indeed all the places I traveled, because I traveled after I left, they all came up with answers to the same questions, and the answers are different, and they're neither better nor worse. They all work.
If I could interject, because I think Alan brought up an important point. I think when students go abroad, the initial thought is that I'm having a semester away from Maryland, I'm going to be in Europe or in Israel, it's going to be exciting, it's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. And while there's some understanding that there are going to be things to adjust to, In fact, when you get there, I think all students are somewhat shocked by it. On the kibbutz, I think something I see almost every year is that students will get to the kibbutz and the first couple of days they'll feel very uncomfortable. And it may be 3 or 4 days before they start to make some friendships with the Israelis and start to ease into the situation. I think it's the same thing with the family stay. Initially, there's a period of roughness, and then gradually you start feeling comfortable in another culture.
The thing that was amazing, though, was I expected to feel comfortable. I expected to melt right in. And it was bizarre knowing that you were in an English-speaking country, and yet you walked into a room, and the minute you opened your mouth, Americans, they knew it. They could hear it. They knew it.
That's interesting. What I'd like you to do, Alan, maybe we'll start with you and then we'll come back to you, Karen, is that why don't you share with us like one special, I don't know, some activity, something you did while you were in London, a little apart from the educational system.
That's easy. The most exciting thing I did in London, apart from just the meeting people and seeing things, was my job. It is possible for students to get 6-month work visas over there. And my interest is theater, and while I didn't go there to study theater, I got a job in a theater. And I worked as the assistant to the house manager, and had a terrific time. It was interesting because it was a very, very laid-back theater, and we met a lot of British stars. A lot of British stars came through there both to see the show and be in the show. And everybody around me was absolutely thrilled. It didn't mean anything to me, you know, and I thought, well, I just was over this. Then one night, Sir Laurence Olivier was supposed to come to our theater. It was going to be my job to take care of him. Well, of course, I melted. I wasn't as inured to it as all that.
That sounds like an excitement, especially, like I said, with being a theater major originally and liking the communication arts. I would probably be very excited to see him there. I want to turn it over to Karen. I probably want to step over anything else you might have been thinking. Earlier you were talking to me about a camel ride that you took, and that fascinated me, and I was hoping you could just spend another moment telling it to everyone else.
Well, the nice thing about Israel is that it's a small country, and although we weren't able to travel to the north and west of us, we could go down to Egypt. And I think I have a flair for trouble when I'm traveling, because I went down to Egypt by myself. And I just toured around and I went to the cities and things, but then I would track off on the side and just see what I could get myself into. And most people in Cairo especially speak English, but it happened to be my luck, as it turned out, to get probably the only non-speaking and non-English understanding taxi driver in the neighborhood. And I thought I was going out to see the pyramids, but I ended up being let out in the middle of the desert. And, you know, I didn't know where I was or anything. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, appears this man in traditional garb, and he says, "I am Mahmoud, how can I help you?" Well, it wound up that he was the owner of a stable somewhere out in the desert, and he knew I was lost and on my own, and he invited me home to his house, and that was amazing. That was the first time I experienced true culture shock. There was a little hut and certainly no indoor plumbing and camels and chickens and donkeys in the front yard. Anyway, I mentioned during our long night of feasting and getting to know each other, and I was put into the care of his sister, that I wanted to ride a camel. So at 5:30 the next morning, this huge beast sticks its neck through this little hut, and Mahmoud announced that we were going to go ride a camel. So from this vantage point, I saw the sunrise over the Sphinx, but then we took off across the desert.
And so a beautiful view of the whole Middle East, huh?
Almost,
Really?
yes, mostly sand.
I have a real quick question for both of you. Sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to know one thing. Would you go back?
Oh, certainly.
And Alan?
I just got a letter from one of my friends, and they say come back, and I want to.
Great. All right, I want to thank my guests, Alan Amberg, Karen Antos, and especially Rick Weaver, and thank everyone else for being with us. And we hope to see you again next time.